Good afternoon, Wade. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Not too bad. Very good. So you have a presentation for us?
Yes, just a little overview of the summary of work over the past number of years related to the feasibility study for brackish groundwater extraction and treatment.
Okay, very good. Well, we're going to get started here in about 4 minutes.
That sounds good.
What what's your normal rate of presentation how many minutes per slide?
So that's a good question. There are a lot of slides, and I provided those for background information. I'm hoping everyone's had a chance to page through them before the meeting because I'm intending on going through the first half fairly quickly
Okay.
because I realize
So
I've only got a 20-minute window followed by 10 minutes of questions. So,
at my presentation pace of 2 minutes per slide, we've got a little bit short of 2 hours worth of presentation here.
yeah.
I might make a recommendation. I'd like to hear the whole thing today, but I might recommend that you put a smaller deck together with an executive overview. And then we can put this slide deck in the package and post it on our website so the people will have a chance to go in depth if they need to.
Absolutely. I'm not sure, I sent the full deck to Renee and to Lauren, and I'm not sure if the full one made it in or
It is a full 51 pages plus, 51 pages, I believe.
of which 10 are which are title page slides as separators. So
Yeah.
as I said, I
So,
want to try to go through the
yeah.
the first
So
half fairly
David,
quickly.
we asked him to do this presentation in 20 minutes and with 10 minutes of questions. Did you want him to take longer in this meeting or try to stick to the 20 minutes and then take 20 minutes at the
Is it 20
board
minutes
meeting?
for this meeting or is it 20 minutes for the Board of Directors meeting? It's not. Ah, well, I'm going to say go ahead and take your 20 minutes to present today. And if you're able to get through the entire deck in 20 minutes, somebody better get a fire extinguisher and put the
I
presentation
I
on.
agree.
Okay.
And I apologize in advance. This is a
No, it's
fairly
just fine.
substantive document.
It's a good report. If this isn't on the agenda for the Board of Directors, then I just would request that you make a half a page or a page summary for an executive summary so we can make sure the directors have that.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. I don't know. I have no idea.
So I've not received any messages that he would be late, so I assume he will be coming.
I have a question about page 43, but I'll wait till you get there.
Okay.
All right. So we've got another minute and we'll get going.
Sounds good.
With luck, Director Griffin will be here, scooching in by the hair of Chinny Chin Chin. Beg your pardon, is it time? All right, very good. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to call this meeting of the Indian Wells Valley Water District Administration / Executive Committee regular meeting agenda for Wednesday, August 6th, 2025 to order at 3 p.m. Do I have any, we have no members of the public here. Do we have any online other than our consultant? Do we have any comments from the committee members? Okay. Item 3, outstanding public record requests.
Nothing new has come in, and those that we do have are being worked on by legal. It's really just that one, I believe, right, Lauren? The one that Jim has been sort of chewing his way through?
That's the one where they asked a couple of years ago, but it was all involved with adjudication, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, all right. Well, that must be fun. All right, let's go to item number 4, presentation of brackish groundwater feasibility study. Wade, Mr. Major, it's all you.
All right. Thank you, Lauren. I understand you have the controls. Next slide, please. All right. This afternoon, we don't have a lot of time. We've got a substantial body of work here that encompasses over a couple hundred pages of text, a number of inserts, 21 tables, 126 figures, and about 1,500 pages of appendices. So apologize if I seem to gloss over things. I'm going to go through this fairly quickly because I'm hoping that everybody's had a chance to at least page through it beforehand, and then we can get quickly into the substance as it relates to the comparison of the alternatives and the costs and the more substantive policy questions. Next slide, please. So the overall objective was to identify and quantify brackish water within the basin. And the purpose of this was to really look at expanding local supplies, offset freshwater pumping and augment your existing supply, improve reliability, provide a potential source for emergency supplies, and as a buffer to achieve Sigma sustainability. Next slide, please. Next one. Next slide, please. Very quickly, the work that was performed, we conducted electrical conductivity profiling on 31 wells, groundwater sampling of 21 wells in an effort to fill in some missing data gaps. Next slide, please. We have we conducted 500 miles of SkyTem airborne geophysical survey, did 10 downhole geophysical logs, conducted an aquifer test, looked at 2 industrial users who would potentially accept the RO concentrate or the salty brine that comes out of the RO system. COSO, we looked at 3 locations with 2 pipeline routes. Sears Valley Minerals, we looked at 1 location and 1 pipeline route. Next slide, please. We also looked at traditional evaporation ponds for disposing of the RO concentrate. We looked at 2 sizes of those, and we also looked at deep well injection. So we're really spanning the gamut here of ways to deal with RO concentrate, either pipelining it to an industrial user, putting it in an evaporation pond, or deep well injecting it. Next slide, please. Computer modeling was done utilizing DRI's ModFlow model. What we were trying to do was target areas in the basin where we had TDS or salt concentrations greater than 1,000 milligrams per liter. 3,000 milligrams per liter is the sweet spot. That's the water that we want to target. Anything less than that is pretty fresh, and you can almost get away by blending that with fresh water to reduce the TDS concentration. So we were trying to find a sweet spot of about 3,000 milligrams per liter. We wanted a potential system to be located away from existing production wells. We wanted it to be located where the impact to freshwater resources are minimized, where subsidence would be minimized, and then importantly, outside of the boundary of Nas China Lake. Next slide, please. You can see on the left-hand side, there's a panel showing the constraints at Naval Air Weapons Station China Lake. There's weapons and ordnance primary hazard areas that are quite significant. There's operation and engagement areas and areas where energetics are used. So it's basically a no-go in terms of having any civilian surface infrastructure that is not related to the mission of the base. So the panel in the center of the figure shows potential brackish groundwater resources that are outside of the base boundary. And this is taken from the DRI model. And you can see that there's a couple of locations in the shallow and intermediate zones in the southeastern part of the basin. There's an area in the central south part, and then an area in the western part in the northern agricultural area around Brown Road. So those were really our target areas for this study. Next slide, please. We did brackish groundwater sampling so we could determine how a reverse osmosis membrane was going to perform. We collected groundwater samples from 2 existing wells, NR1 and NR2. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Key findings. So over the past 80 years, this basin's been extensively studied, but there's still a lack of knowledge about the deeper groundwater. There's a lot of shallow wells, a lot of domestic wells, and public supply and ag wells, but the deeper groundwater is still a bit of a mystery. A lot of these deeper wells, the ones that were installed as part of the USBR program in 1991, their diameter is too small to be able to perform useful work other than measuring water levels or at best conducting low volume passive diffusion sampling. Collecting large volumes of water from these wells is time consuming and expensive. Purge rates are extremely low. For example, NR1D, that took 8 days of purging 24 hours in order to get the water to a point where we could collect a groundwater sample. Additionally, a number of the wells are in disrepair. The 3 wells in the USBR 10 cluster are blocked at partial depth. The NR1 3-well cluster is functional, but the screened interval is mostly filled up with sediment. Next slide, please.
Doctor, I'm sorry, is it Doctor or Mr. Major?
No, just Mr.
Mr. Major, could you please define for me what you mean by deeper well?
So the wells, if I'm just going to pull the number off of the figure. So deeper wells are things that are 1,000+ feet deep.
Thank you.
And the NR1 and the USBR wells, these guys go down to, in some cases, 2,000 feet. So I would say deeper is anything from 1,000 to 2,000 feet.
That's perfect. Thank you.
You can see here on the top left the blockage that we encountered in BR10, and on the right-hand side you can see the sediment accumulation in the bottom of NR1D, where we did not have a lot of screen interval available that was open and exposed to the groundwater. So these wells they're deep, they're a small diameter, they're difficult to work with, and they're in disrepair. Next slide, please.
And
Now,
that's kind of a
brackish
limit.
groundwater was thought to exist near NR1 and NR2. Back when these wells were installed in 1991, the TDS concentrations measured in those wells were about 3,300 milligrams per liter. That's perfect. That's the kind of brackish water that we want to find as part of a treatment program. However, when we actually went out and purged and sampled those, the groundwater in those wells was found to be closer to seawater. So instead of 3,000 milligrams per liter, we found 34,000 milligrams per liter in NR1 and 14,000 in NR2. So based on the purge times, the volumes, and looking at the changes in field parameters as we went and recently sampled them, we think that these wells were likely inadequately developed in 1991 when they were initially installed and sampled. What was sampled was not really representative groundwater. It was a mixture of groundwater and development water and drilling fluid. So the recent samples are likely more indicative of actual groundwater conditions, and that water down there is salty. Next slide, please. So given that the overall feasibility study objective was to characterize brackish groundwater, at this point, the project's infeasible. That water down there is seawater, it's saline. That was not the mandate and the scope of the investigation. This project was never intended to be an inland seawater desalination project. However, DWR instructed the brackish group to continue with the feasibility study and evaluate that seawater alongside a hypothetical brackish water, similar to what was found during a pilot study conducted by Carollo in 2008. And that way they could at least compare and contrast the differences in treatment performance and the difference in costs between the two water qualities. But from the standpoint of empirically finding brackish groundwater, we did not find it where it was supposed to be. Next slide, please. The panel on the left shows where the Carollo pilot test location occurred. It occurred in a shallow well, well number 1, which is significantly shallower than the NR1 and NR2 wells shown on the figure. Those wells that we sampled go down to about 2,000 feet. The Carollo well, where they conducted the pilot test, only went down to about a couple of 100 feet. So there is supposed to be brackish water in that area, and the Carollo study found it in the shallow layers. But by the end of the study, it only ended up being about 1,400 milligrams per liter. So not particularly salty up near the surface, but down at 2,000 feet, it's a lot more like salt water. Next slide, please.
Just a quick question.
Yep.
On the left-hand panel, you've got a yellow line, 3,000 milligrams per liter, and you have a red line at 1,000? Or is that, am I missing that?
The red line is, oh yes, so those are in different, they're both 3,000, but they're in different layers of the DRI model. So the red line represents hydrogeologic zone 2, which is shallower than the yellow line, which is the deeper water in hydrogeologic zone 3.
Thank you.
Lauren, if we could go to the 2 slides to the key findings tables. That's perfect. So oh, you can't see the bottom one. We're a little bit of crop issue here with the table. The key thing here is that when we modeled how an RO membrane performed with the seawater, we got about 44% recovery. So that is, for every 3,100 gallons you put through the RO system, you only make about 1,367 gallons of fresh water. The other 1,700 is that salty brine that you have to get rid of. So a 44% recovery is not particularly good, and that would be very typical of a seawater recovery. The Carollo sample at 1,400, we got an 80% recovery, and that's kind of what you're hoping for a brackish groundwater desalination project, is getting 80% fresh water, 20% RO concentrate. So this sort of brackets a best case to a worst case scenario in terms of membrane performance. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. We did 4 modeling scenarios. Scenario 1 was way up there at location 1 around USBR 10, 1 vertical well. Location 2, we concluded that on the basis of hydraulic conductivities, we weren't going to be able to extract there because of high drawdowns. Scenario 2 was at location 3, that's in the south central pocket. And then scenario 3 was back up at location 1. And finally, scenario 4 was in the vicinity of USBR 6. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So what we found, there are various drawdowns in each of the scenarios, and you can see that these drawdowns varied from 60 feet of groundwater drawdown by the year 2070 up to greater than 500 feet of groundwater drawdown, depending upon the location, the well configuration, and the extraction rate. Now, the scenario 2 appeared to have reasonable drawdowns at 7,500 acre feet or less, but the brackish groundwater in that south central part of the basin appears to be an isolated pocket, and we're in close proximity to the water district's well number 34. So overall, it appears that scenario 4, which is 2 horizontal wells up in the vicinity of USBR 6, extracting at 5,000 acre feet per year, appears to be reasonably feasible. Next slide, please. We then looked at the key question everybody asks is, what are the impacts to shallow wells going to be? And so DWR has a criteria where if your water level in your well falls to below 80% of the total depth of the well, that well is said to be vulnerable. Next slide. So we downloaded and evaluated well completion reports in PDF format from DWR, and 857 of those wells had total depth information. Next slide, please. Very briefly, this histogram shows the years that the wells were installed, and you can see that you've got a peak installation of about 1976 to about 1980. You've got smaller peaks corresponding with other global events that occur, such as 9/11 and so on, but you can basically follow this distribution curve to find out when the bulk of these wells were installed and how old they are currently. Next slide, please. This is the total depth histogram of the installed wells. Most of the wells are installed at a depth of 300 feet, but it seems the drillers prefer things in 50-foot increments. So you've also got peaks at 200 feet, 250 feet, 350 feet, 400 feet, and 500 feet with a nice Gaussian infill in between that. So this shows that you've still got a number of wells that are shallower than 300 feet, but you also got a significant number that are greater than 300 feet in depth. Next slide, please. Now, in considering the well status, in 2023, 607 wells were considered to be okay, 215 were considered to be vulnerable, and 28 of those were predicted to have gone dry sometime historically in the past. So that is our baseline starting condition. Now, the 2070 baseline is no brackish water extraction project. That's just everybody pumping as they are now or as they were in terms of supporting agriculture, supporting the water district, supporting the base, and supporting Sears Valley minerals. You can see that by the 2070, 162 wells are okay, and a whole number of those have now become vulnerable, and up to 203 of those have gone dry. So just in baseline conditions over the next 50 some or 47 years, you would be drawing down the water table and drawing out a significant number of those shallow wells. In 2070, in considering the brackish scenario, you actually have 30 more wells that are in an okay status, but you've still got 457 that are vulnerable, 201 that are dry. And this relates to the offsetting of the pumping that I talked about earlier. You're extracting brackish groundwater to treat so you can pump less fresh water. Next slide, please. And that's really what this slide shows. You can see triangles that are pointed downwards means that a well status changes for the worse. The water level goes down. And you can see we've got a number of those triangles up in the area of USBR 6 where the brackish extraction scenario was proposed. But you can see the triangles that are pointing upwards in the south central part of the basin. That's where the water levels actually improve. So because you're pumping less fresh water from those main water district wells and Sears Valley mineral wells, you actually prolong the life and the longevity of that freshwater resource. You've got localized impacts up where you're extracting the brackish water, but you're reducing the impacts in your freshwater pumping areas. Next slide, please. Now, subsidence is a big issue for the Navy because of the snort track. The best data available is the synthetic aperture radar data collected by Trey Altamira. Basically, we've got a level of accuracy of about 20 millimeters for their data set that extends from 2015 to 2023. Next slide, please. This shows year by year vertical displacement of the land in Indian Wells Valley Basin using that synthetic aperture radar data. And you can see this extends from 2015 all the way out to January 2025. But something significant happened in 2019, and that was the series of earthquakes that occurred on July 4th and 5th that really caused vertical displacement of land. And in fact, that displacement in that one panel you see in the top right was so significant that it actually overwhelms everything else that has occurred before that or after that, and it really sort of skews the overall full data set panel, which is the one in the bottom center of the screen. So those earthquakes had a significant effect on land surface, whereas you weren't seeing that beforehand or afterwards as it related to groundwater pumping in any of the areas. Next slide, please. This is the earthquake slide. Next slide, please. So the Navy has a tolerance of about 2.2 millimeters per year of subsidence that they can accept on the snort track. The synthetic aperture radar data can't measure things at that fine of a scale. The Navy hasn't reported any subsidence issues right now, but honestly, on the basis of the accuracy of the INSAR data, you might not be able to separate out subsidence caused by groundwater extraction and subsidence caused by tectonic activity, because that seems to dominate. You'd need to look at a separate ground-based, highly accurate subsidence measurement system, and you wouldn't be able to rely upon the larger scale basin-wide INSAR data. Next slide, please. Back up just one, please. Now, in considering the feasibility of this, not only did we look at costs, but we looked at CEQA NEPA approvals, soils, geology, seismic hazards, hydrology, land parcel analysis, pipeline hydraulics, and existing infrastructure. Next slide, please. We looked, as I said earlier, two water qualities, the NR1 seawater and the Carollo brackish water. We looked at 5 concentrate disposal options, 3 pipeline routes to 2 industrial users, evaporation ponds, as well as deep well injection. So ultimately, we worked up 10 different sets of cost estimates, both in terms of CapEx as well as OpEx. Next slide, please. These schematics just show generally the layout of the extraction pipelines. You've got, on the right-hand panel, you've got a yellow one paralleling the highway right-of-way going up to COSO. You've got a lighter blue one paralleling the SCE high voltage power lines to COSO. You've got a red one, which is the permeate going to a new reservoir on Bowman Road. And then finally, the green one going out to Sears Valley Mineral. Next slide, please. And we then looked at 2 sizes of evaporation ponds, one for each of the water qualities. The larger ponds would be the seawater type brine, and the smaller ponds would be the brackish water. And you can see from the scale of this how big these evaporation ponds would be relative to the center pivot irrigation items that you see for the alfalfa of Meadowbrook Dairies. These would be massive evaporation ponds.
Evaporation lakes.
Basically lakes, yeah. These are approaching some of the tailings ponds in northern Alberta at the oil sands on the basis of these sizes.
Wow.
Next slide, please. So we looked at CapEx, we looked at the annual OpEx, we looked at the net present value. We did a total cost comparison in terms of dollars per acre foot over the 30-year life of the project. And then we did additional analysis to look at, well, how much of this is treatment and conveyance versus, or sorry, extraction and treatment versus conveyance. Next slide, please. Now, so we worked up our 10 costs, but we also wanted to compare that to other stuff that others have done in the basin. So Stetson completed a feasibility study for a recycled water project in 2023. And they basically had 3 options that they looked at. And the third option was a subtle variation between a 2-stage and a 3-stage reverse osmosis system. So they looked at tertiary treatment with landscape irrigation, surface spreading, and then subsurface injection, either 2-stage or 3-stage RO. Next slide, please. Their feasibility study, so their figures on the left-hand panel, basically shows their pipeline network to distribute that landscape irrigation water. The middle panel shows the pipeline and the land spreading area, and then the right-hand panel shows the pipeline and the deep well injection areas. Next slide, please. So the things that matter. When the smoke clears, you can see our 10 cost estimates for the seawater quality in the top group of 5, the Carollo brackish water quality in the middle panel of 5, then compared to the Stetson items below. Now you can see that for seawater, you're looking at anywhere from $4,800 to $5,000 an acre foot to make 2,200 acre feet of fresh water per year. Pretty significant. Those giant evaporation ponds, we're thinking that's going to end up being around $12,000 an acre foot, not including the cost to buy the land. And then the deep injection wells, they come in very similar. You'd need 6 wells coming in at about $5,100 an acre foot. So pretty expensive water to desalinate that seawater. The brackish groundwater in the middle panels, that stuff varies from around $2,200 up to about $2,400 an acre foot. And that's much more reasonable. That's getting you 4,000 acre feet of fresh water. The evaporation ponds, while the cost is lower, again, you have to get the land, you have to situate those things somewhere. That's basically 2 quarter sections of land would be those 2 ponds, 266 acre ponds. And in terms of deep well injection, you're coming in at around $1,900 an acre foot. To compare the Stetson costs, now the Stetson costs from the FS, we've updated these to 2025 costs. They're coming in anywhere from 2,500. Option 3B surface spreading was down about 1,000. And then finally, the 2 options for subsurface injection, they're coming in at around $3,000 to $3,200 an acre foot. The option that they chose to put forward is what we call option 3C1. So that is tertiary treatment of recycled wastewater, 2-stage RO, and then that pipeline to inject that water into those deep injection wells. So you can see that if you can actually find brackish groundwater, you might be comparable to the cost associated with the Stetson option of dealing with that recycled wastewater. Next slide, please. Now, the evaporation ponds, they're huge. Just because of the large land area and the economic feasibility, we're going to discard those. The deep well injection, while it seems palatable in terms of the cost, they are extremely difficult to get permitted, particularly if you're dealing with, you've got a confined basin where you're injecting that saltwater brine into basically the basin that's holding all of your fresh water. And there's a whole host of constraints you have to overcome in order to get these wells permitted. And then in terms of the Stetson option, we'd already talked about they picked recycling that with 2-stage RO and then deep well injecting the fresh water. Next slide, please. Now, when we looked at extraction and treatment versus conveyance, we found that about 30% of the cost is extraction and treatment, but 67% relates to the conveyance. Treatment and extraction, 33%, conveyance, 67%. So 2/3 of any project cost relates to the pipelines and moving that water around. CapExes are driven by the system size, the pipeline lengths, elevation changes, and the OpExes are driven by pipeline elevation changes. The technology doesn't matter. Whether you're going to desalinate brackish groundwater, seawater, you're going to recycle sewage, technology doesn't matter. Every single project in Indian Wells Valley is a pipeline optimization project. That is, you want the shortest, flattest pipeline possible, and to keep your ops costs down, you want the flattest pipeline route possible so you can avoid excessive amounts of electrical usage for pumping. Every project is a pipeline optimization project, regardless of treatment. Next slide, please. I haven't got a next slide yet, Lauren.
It would help if I put my microphone on.
Lauren, next slide, please.
So the camera is not functioning. You might not know
Oh.
the current slide.
Okay, so yeah, it's showing the previous slide that I was talking to. So the current slide might show the CEC financial summary.
That is what we're showing right now.
Okay. So obviously Provost and Pritchard went through and they did a project definition report of an imported water pipeline project. And then the board hired CEC to evaluate what their missing costs were because they really only considered construction. And so when the smoke clears on that, whether they get a grant or not, that imported pipeline water project is pretty expensive. And just for the sake of being able to compare it to the other Stetson recycled numbers and our 10 numbers, I've summarized those in this slide here. Next slide, please. And go to the actual bulleted slide, which are the policy questions.
So in every case, the imported water is more expensive than treating the brackish water.
Correct. Or the recycled sewage water. But the problem is you haven't found the brackish water. You've found seawater.
Right.
And you don't get a lot of it for 5,000 acre feet per year. You're only ending up with a small amount.
So the real brackish, quote unquote, brackish water is at the south end of the valley.
Yeah, real brackish would be the choice ideal water to find.
Okay.
Now, in terms of policy questions, if you had a Carollo type water, a project could potentially be feasible, but there's a bunch of beyond the cost of everything. There's some policy questions that folks have to wrestle with. And first of all, you got to find the water. Where is it actually empirically? We know a lot of things from some sampling that's been done, but has it actually been verified at depth? Is it acceptable for several hundred shallow wells to go dry or vulnerable as a result of brackish groundwater extraction? Next slide, please. Will the brackish groundwater extraction affect water quality other than TDS? Things like arsenic, iron, manganese, and sulfate. That data is pretty sparse. Some of those parameters, arsenic toxic, iron and manganese, their aesthetic effects, taste and odor and staining issues. Sulfate, taste and odor, as well as a health issue at higher concentrations. Don't actually have enough data to be able to find out how those other parameters will move around the basin if you start extracting brackish groundwater. Is the risk of subsidence acceptable? What happens if you start a brackish groundwater project and you end up getting subsidence that can be tied to displacement of the snort track? What do you do then? Do you take the brackish system offline, or do you try to rehabilitate the snort track? And then finally, the big one, should brackish groundwater extraction be part of a portfolio of several options that could be implemented in the valley? So in addition to recycled wastewater, in addition to imported pipeline water, is this something that should continue to be pursued? And I have gone well over my 20 minutes, and for that I apologize. But I do hope I can answer any questions that you have fairly quickly here.
So we've got, if I understand it correctly, you've got what is effectively seawater levels of concentrates in the northwest portion of the valley and a small pocket of brackish water in the southern part of the valley, southern central. And is that correct?
That is correct.
And the part in
Now,
the southern central really is the only water that fits the brackish definition and would be useful at 80% recovery.
That you can get outside of the fence line of the base.
Right. Okay.
Now, if you can get inside the fence line of the base, you may be able to find the water you're looking for.
So we know that's not going to happen.
Correct.
The base isn't going to allow that. And it sounds like we have really highly saline water at the bottom of the water column in that particular area. And on the maps where you're estimating it's locating, it looks like it's a giant pool of it.
Yes.
So that would be extremely old water. And probably from a time when the basin was filling up and drying out and filling up and drying out and concentrating all into saline water in that particular area. I'm trying to figure out why we have salt water at the bottom. And it must be that probably was a closed basin at the time and was collecting salt like it is in Lake Manly.
I think your hypothesis is correct because of that that ancient lake system that flowed all the way from Owens Lake all the way down into Indian Wells Valley, into Searles Valley, into Panamint Valley, and then finally into Lake Manly.
Yes.
And you're seeing some of that older, really salty stuff at depth.
Okay. All right. Could COSO really actually use water that's equivalent to salt water in their plant processes?
They could. I think they could actually use most water. I think they could actually use most of the TDS stuff. The stuff they're concerned about were the silicas and a few of the other compounds. But
Yeah, you don't want to gum up the pipes and the cracks in the rock.
You don't want to gum up the pipes, but I don't think that COSO would have a problem with using salt water, but it's just very expensive to get it up there because those pipelines are they're so long, 16.2 miles
Uphill.
uphill and a significant amount of hill as well.
Yes.
And then 23 miles paralleling the highway. And so you're looking at elevation changes of 2,400 feet to 2,600 feet pumping that water uphill.
Okay. So I understand that they could collect, COSO operating company could collect the fresh water as it came out of their cooling towers. Is it possible to reuse that water down here, run a pipeline parallel to the pipe which is carrying water up, and perhaps put in a couple of small hydroelectric generators to make electricity to help cover the cost?
You could probably do that, but I don't know if COSO would want to give up that fresh water because I don't think they have enough water to be able to operate their system at their nameplate or their boilerplate capacity. They need more water. So if you can get them to give up their fresh water, you can put that water in a pipeline and get it to flow downhill to you guys. That's certainly an option.
Okay. Well, it would be expensive. And
Yes.
if they have that water, why would they give it back? It's a good point.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. So I think that's the only questions I have. You answered the other question I was thinking of in your presentation. Does anyone else here have questions for Mr. Major?
I'm afraid if you let him leave the Zoom meeting, that'll be the end of it for us.
Okay, so we're almost done. You're going to have to hang around and listen to us make sausage, Mr. Wade. I appreciate your presentation. If you could do a brief executive summary for my directors, I'd appreciate it.
Yes, sir. So you want me to stick around for the next part of your meeting, or am I free to depart? Are there going to be more questions at the end?
Well, you can put us on mute if you like, but if you leave the Zoom meeting, sadly, our Zoom meeting will terminate.
Oh,
and then we will be without broadcasting to the public. So if you wouldn't
understood.
mind,
I got you. Okay, I will keep you live then, and not pay attention to the sausage making. Thank you for your time today, ladies and gentlemen. I really appreciate it. This took a significant effort and many years to get to this point. I'm gutted that deep water is seawater. I was really hoping for something in the 3,000 range, but it was not to be.
Well, I want to thank you for your efforts. I've looked at what you've done. It's admirable and good work, and it has significantly aided in our full understanding of what the basin looks like. And so all of that data is useful to us, and I want to thank you for your efforts.
yes, absolutely. And it helps narrow down the possible options for achieving balance in our valley.
All right. Thank you guys again, and I'll let you get to it.
Have a great day. Thank you.
Thanks, you too.
Okay, item 5, Indian Wells Valley Groundwater Authority. Do you have any observations you would like to make, George?
Not at this time.
The meeting was uneventful last month. We had the most controversy in the open session was the idea of the Groundwater Authority starting its own Facebook page. There were serious objections from our friends in Inyo County. And I thought that it was unwise to put the page up and then develop the policy for managing the page while you were going live. That seemed like you might make some mistakes that would invite lawsuits. And our compatriot from San Bernardino felt the same way. So the idea was tabled until GA staff can come up with a policy, a draft policy that could be reviewed by the legal department first. So that appears to be in the open session the most exciting part. We've been promised by April Keegwin that she's going to produce a more detailed invoice to explain the monies going to the city of Ridgecrest. It's $230,000 some dollars in the last invoice. And that is really all I have to report. Oh, we did receive the reply from the Groundwater Authority saying that, yes, they'd be happy to mediate with us. There were no other stipulations in there other than we'd like to have an official acknowledgement of the receipt of this email. So if somebody could reply to that, George, if you would, and tell them we got this and thank them for it. I'd appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Okay, any questions, comments, observations? Okay, alternate water sources.
I think we anxiously await November to see what happens with the agreement between the Groundwater Authority and the city. I think we would like to hope that since the Groundwater Authority has formally stated that they're not interested in doing recycled water, that they do not continue that agreement and have that water available for others who might be interested in using it.
Okay. Anyone else? All right, thank you. Item 7, draft agenda for the regular board meeting. Let me give it a quick once over, if everybody else would too.
Where did you want to discuss this Brackus feasibility study is it in there as a separate one at this point in time, Lauren? Or would you like me to just discuss it in my general manager's report?
I would discuss it in your general manager's report.
Copy that, sir.
Or you could do it under committee meetings updates.
No, that's true too.
And I do that in my general manager's report as well. I'll update.
I'll pick the one you think is you're most comfortable with, and we'll go from there.
Sure.
Northwest Transmission Pipeline Project, that committee, good. Public Health Goals Report. Okay. Not a very, Indian Wells Valley GA. I think this is fine. I don't see anything. Has anybody else spot anything that needs to be modified? Okay. Great. Do we have any future agenda items? Don't everybody speak at once. All right, then we'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting today at 3:44 p.m. Thank you for your time and attention.